Okay, welcome back. So, in the last video, we were talking about expressions of quantity. And remember, expressions of quantity is just saying how many there are. And saying how many there are in adjective clauses. So, the example that we gave again is I could say, I'm holding some markers which are blue. I'm holding some markers which are blue. But if only some of the markers are blue, not all of them. If I have this situation, then I might say, I'm holding some markers, 4 of which are blue. Now, we also talked about, with markers, I'll use which, because which is a thing. Which is the word that I use for things. What do I do if it's people? Like Betty's friends. So let's take a look over here. Betty has 4 friends. Betty has 4 friends. Okay. And so you can see she has 4 friends. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, 3 of the friends are girls. 1 of the friends is a boy. So let's think, how would I say that? I want to say she has some friends, but they're not all girls. I want to say that 3 of them are girls. The way that I'll say that is very much the same as I do with which, but because it's a person, I'm going to use a different word. So I could say, Betty has 4 friends, and again I'll do it this very much the same way. I'll say number plus of plus whom. Because it's a person, I'm going to use whom. Because it's people, I'm going to use whom. So now that you know that, let's figure out what I'd say. So Betty has 4 friends, and first I'd say number. Well, let's say we want to talk about the number of girls, okay? So I could say Betty has 4 friends, and 3 of them, remember, are girls. So I'd say 3, I say the number, then I say of, and then I say whom. 3 of whom are girls. Or I could also say, Betty has 4 friends, and let's say if I want to say the number of boys, I could also say that. So if I want to say, is a boy. So how many are boys? Well, 1, right? So I could say, Betty has 4 friends, and I'll say, number, 1 of which. So I could say, Betty has 4 friends, 3 of whom are girls. Betty has 4 friends. Excuse me. I wrote the wrong word. Sorry. 1 of whom is a boy. Okay? Because I use whom for people, which is for things. All right. Now, let me point out a couple of things about this. First thing is, you might notice here, again, like in the sentences we had, for the example sentences we had with which, this has a comma. And like I said, expressions of quantity and adjective clauses will usually have a commas. Your book says always, not quite true, but usually they are. So, here I'm using a comma. Betty has 4 friends, 3 of whom are girls. Or, Betty has 4 friends, 1 of which is a boy. How is that? So, now, other thing I want to point out. You remember when we were talking about things, I said, when I'm talking about things, I need to use which. I can't use that. Similar with whom. When I'm talking about people with an adjective clause and expressions of quantity, let's say this. When I'm using expressions of quantity with people in an adjective clause, So when it's with people in an adjective clause, I have to use So when I'm talking about expressions of quantity with people in adjective clauses, I have to use whom. I have to use whom. And it's the only word I can use. Americans don't say whom very much, and we usually only say it when we're formal. And so if you are thinking, oh, this uses whom, does that sound formal? Yes, it does. The way that we're learning to say this here with expressions of quantity tends to be formal. So it's formal when I use it with which, it's formal when I use it with whom, it's formal when I use it with the third one that we're going to talk about in just a minute. Okay? But the important thing that I want you to know here is when I'm writing a sentence like this, when I'm saying how many there are in an adjective clause, when I'm saying how many there are in an adjective clause, and I'm talking about people, then I use whom. There's one more way there's one more word that I can use with expressions of quantity. Well, let me back up, excuse me. So we've seen I can use expressions of quantity, and if I'm talking about things, I'll say which. If I'm talking about people, I'll say whom. And there's one more way. There's one more time I can use expressions of quantity with adjective clause, and I'm going to stop this video, and in the next video I'll tell you about that.